All right. So if we look at what we're connecting to yesterday is being able to apply it to a graph, okay? So physically doing what we talked about. If we look at the beginning, let's start at the beginning. Remember, if A is negative, it means a reflection, and it means a reflection across the x-axis. And then A, if it's greater than 1, is a vertical stretch. Less than 1 is a vertical compress. The B value or anything inside the parentheses is the x, but it's opposite. So like negative normally means a reflection across the x, but since it's inside the parentheses, it's a reflection across the y. B, if it's less than 1, normally means compress, but since it's inside the parentheses, that's a horizontal stretch. If B is greater than 1, that normally means stretch, but since it's inside the parentheses, it's a horizontal compress. The C value tells you to go left or right. Again, since it's inside the parentheses, plus C doesn't mean to the right. It actually means to the left. And minus C actually means to the right instead of the left. The D value tells you to go up or down. Since it's positive, it would be up. If it's negative, it means down. So let's put it all together. If we look at number 1, they want us to manipulate this graph to match what this says. So first things first, okay? It's going to be a little bit of erasing, so bear with me. The negative means a reflection across the x. So think of it like a mirror. This is going to go down. This one's going to go up. So it's going to be pointed downward. There's my reflection across the x. 2/3 means since it's less than 1, means a vertical compress. Now think about it physically. If I'm vertically compressing it like this, I'm pushing down vertically, that means my line is going to get flatter, okay? Physically, it means it's going to get flatter by 2/3, okay? I like to think of that as the slope of 2/3. So this one has a slope of 1, 2/3 would be relatively flatter just by a little bit, okay? But it's also pointed the other way, so my bad. It's actually going to be flatter, but going this way. And now the -7 tells me it's physically going to move down by 7. So then I put it all together. I'm going to move it down 7. I'm going to make it flatter, and then it's going to be reflected across the x, so it's going to point the other direction like that, okay? And we're just kind of guesstimating. I'm not making it very accurate. I'm just physically showing you what it's doing. Let's look at number 2. So number 2, again, all graphs linear start with y equals x, just like that. The first thing I see is negative, but it's a reflection across, since it's inside the parentheses, it's a reflection across the y-axis, which means it's just going to flip-flop like that, which almost is identical to reflection across the x, so it's not much different. But then the 5 is the B value, and since it's greater than 1, it's horizontal compress, which means horizontal compress means if I push it from side to side, it's going to steepen by 5. Okay, so horizontal B is greater than 1 means of steepen by 5 there. Yeah, and so then it's not only pointed down, but it's also going to be steeper. The 1 tells me left or right, but since it's positive 1, I have to think the opposite, so we're going to move left 1. And then the y value, the D value is -4, so it's going to move down 4. Okay, so it's going to be on -1, -4. The origin is going to move down to -1, -4. And then it's going to point down, but be steeper. So it's going to be more or less like this. Okay, let's try that again. Number 3. So the negative in the A position means a reflection across the X, technically. So again, it's just going to be pointed down. The 8 is in the B position, and since it's greater than 1, that would normally mean stretch, but since it's horizontal compress on the inside of the parentheses, it's going to be steeper. The origin is going to move right 2, down 5. So I'm going to start at the origin and go right 2, down 5. So my line needs to go through that point. It's going to be steeper because it was a horizontal compress, and it's going to go to the negative direction like that. Okay, number 4, no negative here, so it's going to be pointed upward. The 1/3 is in the B position. Less than 1 normally means compress, but since it's horizontal, it's going to be a stretch, so that means it's going to flatten. And then it's going to flatten. And then -4 means go to the right 4 and then down 1 according to the -1. So on the origin, if I go right 4, down 1, now I want my graph to be flatter. because it was a horizontal stretch, and it's going to be pointed upward still. So it's going to be more or less like that. If I look at number 5, the negative is inside the parentheses, which means a reflection. So it's going to be pointed the other way. And then the -8 just means it's going to move down 8 because it's in the Y position. So it's going to be pointed downwards going through -8. Now, it didn't get steeper or anything because it's still, there's no A or B value. Number 6, again, the negative is a reflection across the Y, technically, inside the parentheses, which is still just a reflection. The origin is going to move to the left 5 and then down 8. So left 5, down 8. So that means my line just needs to go through -5, -8. And then it needs to point down. It didn't get steeper or flatter because there's no A or B value. Number 7. So again, there's no negative, so there's no reflection. It's going to be pointed up. The 3 is in the A position and is greater than 1. That means a vertical stretch. So that means it's just going to be steeper with a slope of 3, okay? And then the -2 means to the right 2, up 8. So if I go right 2, up 8, and then I make it steeper, it's going to more or less look like that. Number 8, this one does have a reflection, so it's going to be pointed down. It only wants me to move it up 3, so it's going to be pointed down. It's not going to be any steeper, and then it's just going to be moved up. Number 9 does have a reflection across the Y-axis, so it's going to be pointed down. Now, the 4/5 is in the B position, which normally means less than 1. But then since it's inside the parentheses, it's not a compress, it's a horizontal stretch, which means it's still going to flatten, but it's going to be technically called a horizontal stretch. And then the -9 means it's going to move down 9. So it's going to be pointed down a little flatter like that. Okay, so it's just being able to physically do the transformation on a graph.